title of this one is The Function of Casual Sex Action and Inaction Regret. Regret's very different for men and women. Actually, before I sort of get into some of these notes, let me just read you the hypothesis that the researchers cooked up. So the two that we're interested in is the hypothesis that they formulated around the gals. And the first one was, with this study, they had two specific periods of time where they surveyed these women based on, these behaviors, obviously, on short-term sex. And they had figured out, or had thought with their hypothesis, that with regret, action regret more specifically, there would be a reduction in short-term sex and bad choices in women. The second hypothesis that they stated before collecting all this data was that action regret, again, at point 1, predicts entering into long-term relationships or choosing higher mate value partners at point 2, especially for women. So they're basically saying, in layman's term, that women will probably be making better decisions as a result of experiencing regret. So let's get into it. Well, the study details for the participants, let me just close this window over here and this one. So the study details for the participants that got involved in the study, it's actually a Norwegian study. There was almost 400 participants, mostly women, and a good chunk of them returned for the follow-up time, which was 4.5 months later. An approximation is what they said. The methodology was sort of tied around action regret and inaction regret. And action regret just simply means regret over engaging in casual sex. And inaction regret is regret over missing casual sexual opportunities. Women were more likely to express regret over action, meaning engaging in short-term sexual intimacy. And men were more likely to express regret for missed opportunities for casual sex. So totally different. Like I've been saying for a while, men and women are totally different. That's just the way it is. But, people like to argue that and say, no, we're the same. It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Well, every time I get into an Evo psych study and read them, there's always significant differences. Let me see here. There's really nothing more from the methodology here. It's just, it's your standard mumbo jumbo stuff. But here's the key findings. So we talked about sex differences in regret, how women report significantly more action regret than men, basically. And what they're thinking is that, what their hypothesis was anyway, is that the function of regret is to correct bad choices and bad behavior to make better decisions later on down the road. So let's get into the behavioral changes. With women, action regret did not lead to fewer one-night stands, higher quality partner selection, or a shift to long-term relationships at point 2, which is 4.5 months down the road. Say it again. Action regret in women did not lead to less one-night stands, higher quality partner selection, or a shift in long-term relationships. There was no evidence of adaptive behavioral changes whatsoever in the gals. With men, there was no shift towards pursuing short-term sex. Surprise, surprise, men want sex, right? So a few other factors that they revealed was sexual disgust was a consistent predictor of higher regret, particularly for women. What does that mean in layman's terms? If she gets with a guy that she has buyer's remorse for, if we can put it that way, then that would be a very strong predictor of more regret on her part. But like we learned earlier on behavioral change, there was no change in behavior. In fact, it gets worse. I'll get into that in just one second. Higher regret was associated with a lower likelihood of entering into committed relationships at the second point. Fine. 2/3 of single participants reported at least one new one-night stand between point 1 and point 2, which is a 4.5 month span that they collected the data on. So today and then 4.5 months later, 2/3 of the participants, which are mostly going to be the women, engaged in at least one more new one-night stand during that period of time. Statistical notes: selective dropout occurred. T2 participants reported more casual sex and less regret at T1. So this is very interesting. So the participants reported more casual sex during that period of time, but less regret as time went on. So as a function of time, as women are behaving more promiscuous and they have more one-night stands or short-term sexual encounters, they express less and less regret and return to the same behavior more and more. No significant changes in mating strategies were observed, challenging the assumption that regret serves an adaptive function. So evolutionary psychologists are like, out there thinking, well, regret's to improve behavior. It's a feeling, quote unquote, that human beings feel, which force them to make better choices, which we didn't see as a result of the study. All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel, hit subscribe.